Hello everyone, I'm Corbin and this is Plant Basics. In this episode we are going to look at Anthurium Clarinervium care. Also, as you can hear, there's a parrot in the background chewing on some paper, so just ignore that for the moment. Anthurium Clarinervium is really one of my all-time favorite velvet leaf anthuriums. It's a beautiful plant. I've had this particular plant probably about 3 years now. That's why the stem, you can see, no, it must be 4 years. You can see how long the stem is. Absolutely love this plant. It's an extremely easy to care for plant. I actually thought when I got this plant that it might be a tricky plant. It might be something that I might not be able to grow in a normal home environment. And boy, have I been proven wrong. This is really a extremely low maintenance anthurium. And it looks beautiful. These leaves to me are just so beautiful and soft and velvety. So let's talk about how I care for this plant. So we'll start off with watering. So I found that this plant does like to be kept moist. Now there is a caveat here. So it likes to be kept moist, does not like to stand in water. So always when you are watering this plant, make sure that the drip tray underneath or the cover pot or whatever you keep your plant in, that no water has collected in there. And of course, people always ask me this question of how often do I water my plants? What's the frequency? And the truth is that it all depends on the conditions that day. What I do is I do check my plant every week if it does require water, but I don't just apply water weekly almost blindly, if that makes sense. I always make sure that I check what's happening. Guys, I'm sorry this is distracting in the background, but she is like a professional paper shredder. It is literally her favorite activity that she likes to do is to shred paper. Okay, so when you water will often depend on light, because if your plant is in bright light, it will photosynthesize more, so it will use more water from the growing media to keep it hydrated. Higher light will often also go hand in hand with higher temperatures, and the same thing applies. If the temperatures are nice and warm, your plant is using moisture to keep itself hydrated to compensate for the moisture that it's losing through its leaves. If temperature, also a thing with like temperature is that if temperatures are high, you'll also have water evaporation through the top of the pot. And if you have a clay pot, it will also be to the sides of the pot. So that, so those two go hand in hand. Of course, in lower light, your plant is not using as much of the moisture. So now we see again that the plant, that there needs to be a decrease in the amount of moisture that you give your plant. And the same goes for lower temperatures, because now you don't have the evaporation and you don't have your plant taking up moisture from the growing media in the pot. So all of those things come together when we talk about how often and when we water our plants. So next I want to talk about light. So this is a plant that really does like bright light. In lower light, you'll see a stretching of the petiole. The stem is called the petiole. And what I've actually now done with my plant is I keep the plant on the floor. And now for the first time, I'm seeing this, that the plant is really growing upright, where before, when the plant was on a table in more light, it grew more like almost like shorter petioles, and the leaves also faced in multiple directions, not only primarily now into two directions. So where you place your plant will often also have an effect on your petioles and how your leaves sit on the plant. But in saying that, the plant is still getting nice bright light even with it being on the floor, because sunlight comes in down and hits it on the floor. It does get early morning sunlight, but then for the rest of the day it is shaded. Then for the rest of the day it is shaded. Yeah, so I think it wants nice bright light. So if you keep your plant in bright light, but be sure to shade it from that half afternoon sun, then your plant should be fine and grow well. So let's talk about humidity. So I've always provided this plant with additional humidity, but these days I've been less inclined to use my humidifiers to the point that I've now actually stopped using them. And I haven't really seen a effect on the growth of the plant. So that tells me that this plant is also well adapted to normal average household humidity. So something that's really important with these plants is, of course, the soil that you use. And I use a mixture of cocoa and orchid bark, and that also with some perlite. Sorry, I forgot to mention that, with some perlite to give you a nice aerated mixture. Now, in saying that, philodendron, Anthurium Clarinervium is a terrestrial type of orchid. So it doesn't quite need the epiphytic. It doesn't quite need that epiphyte level of drainage, but it still likes drainage and still likes air around the roots. And when using things like orchid bark in the mixture, you must just be cognizant of the fact that it does tend to break down. And this is often something we find with even orchids. After a time, the media starts to break down and becomes acidic. And the same thing happens with these plants, and with all plants really that you plant in that type of mix. So you do want to keep an eye on it. You do want to maybe replace it after a few years, just to get some fresh media in there again, to make sure that you keep the roots of your plant healthy. So I haven't repotted this plant in quite a while, and so that's why I'm saying that. So this plant will also be repotted sometime this week, and we'll have a look-see at what's happening at the roots. So the fertilizer I use for this is the same fertilizer all my other plants get, and that is a nitrogen-based orchid fertilizer. And I also give it a dosage of liquid kelp from time to time, and then also a top dress of worm castings that just acts as a slow release fertilizer over time. And it seems to respond quite well to that level of treatment. So I want to say almost like regular weekly, weekly week fertilizer basically is what I give, because I always give out half the recommended strength listed on the packaging of fertilizer. So pests on this plant, you want to watch out for scale and you want to watch out for thrips. Thrips, you need to have a soapy solution, so dishwashing liquid with some water can help for thrips. And for scale insect, neem oil works quite well, because what it does, it works through like suffocation, so it suffocates the insect. Alex? You having a nice time? So with neem oil, you want to really like apply it regularly, like every few days when you have an infestation, to make sure that you like cover everything. But generally, I will say this is not a plant that's particularly attractive to insects, which makes it the ideal plant for me because I don't like plants that are very high maintenance. And so propagation can be done by either stem cuttings, if you want to take off your big stem and then new growth might start from the stub, or sometimes plants will also produce offshoots, and these you can easily divide up and pot them up individually and treat them like you would mature plants. Always make sure that when you're dividing plants is that you don't want to break the roots. You want to keep as much of the roots intact because that will give the plant the strength, to like grow on. And you also want to use a nice, free draining mixture and plant the plant into a pot that's appropriate for the size of the root. So you don't want to overpot it, but you also don't want to underpot it and cram all the roots into a small pot. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that the paper shredding in the background wasn't too distracting. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and me and Alexandra will see you in the next video.